This may be one of the most important videos I have ever made on this channel. And I know, I know we live in the TikTok era where all our dopamine levels are fried and our attention span is just almost non-existent. So I ask you to try and watch this whole video, regardless of these fleeting attention spans. Because if you just watch some of it or just watch this first part, you're really not going to be getting the message that I am trying to release, that I am trying to pass on to you. I feel like I've lived many lives within this single life. I've gone through many different stages, many different phases. I've gone through that phase of being a pure child that is in deep commune with that one source, to being somewhat indoctrinated into the system, the society that we live, to living this sort of rebellious phase where you just want to do everything that people are telling you not to do. You want to party, you want to live almost like this hedonistic lifestyle. And now I find myself in this phase of my life that I live today, hopefully more evolved and hopefully somewhat wiser than the other phases that I've gone through. And it's from this phase that I find myself within, in this present moment, that I want this message to come from. I was born into a somewhat, I say somewhat because you'll find out, a somewhat Catholic household. You know, I was baptized when I was younger, and this idea of a higher power or God was preached to me through the church system, through a man in one of those black coats standing on stage telling you about this force that created us. And I never really understood, perhaps not understood isn't the right word, I never really felt in deep commune with the words of this preacher, with the words of this person trying to tell me about this force, this power. I always felt that it was somewhat polluted, that it didn't feel in alignment with myself, and I've never really liked being told what to do through other people. So because of this experience growing up young in this somewhat Catholic household, somewhat because my parents were never heavily Catholic, which is a very good thing, you know, that they were open-minded enough to allow space for myself and my brother and sister to have our own sort of perspective on life, and we weren't forced to think how this preacher was telling us to think. Nonetheless, this experience of going to these church meetings and such turned me off the idea of religion and turned me off the idea of God, because it was something that I didn't align with. So after these early experiences with this idea, I almost through this rebellious feeling of trying to do everything that people tell you not to do, I pushed these ideas aside. I don't think I ever fell into true atheism, but I certainly fell into some form of hedonism. Hedonism in the sense that I am the most important thing here, and everything I do is for my own enjoyment, for my own fleeting sense of pleasure. And then after living this life of chasing pleasure, of chasing self-fulfillment, I eventually began to realize, hey, I've been doing this, I've been going out, I've been partying, I've been drinking, I've been doing all these things that I thought were going to bring some sense of fulfillment. And in the moment they did. In the moment they did bring this pleasure. But it would not last. You know, when I left these states, when I woke up the next morning after going to a party, after consuming a lot of alcohol and other such things, I felt empty. I still felt this hole within my being, this hole that I thought I could fill with these substances from the external world. I felt it even more strongly. And after couple years of living this sort of life of constant partying and constant substance abuse, I began to reflect a little bit and think, hey, there must be a better way. And it's from this thought, from this yearning to try and find a better way, to try and find something that would truly fulfill this gaping hole within myself, that I began to turn inward. I began to look for answers, not through the words of somebody else, but through my own internal guidance system. And it is precisely when I began going within, looking inwardly, and listening to that inner compass that we all have, that I began to find some truth, that I began to develop a relationship with that one force, that force that we can call God, that force that this preacher when I was a kid was trying to tell me about. But now I was living it myself. No one was telling me it. I was simply communing with it internally. So I began to listen. I began to listen to this internal guidance system, this inner voice, this silent whisper. And as soon as I began doing this gaping hole within myself began to shrink. I began to feel whole again. So I continued down this path, this path of looking inward, of developing my personal connection with the universal force. And I've never looked back. So where I'm going with all of this, you live in the same world that I live in, that I've grown up in. We all have a similar sort of story, oddly enough, although the specific details are slightly changed. So you too may have been brought up in a religious household. You may too be used to this preacher telling you about God, telling you about God from the external. But the true relationship, the true communion with this single force, this single power that comes under many names, can really only be strengthened, and the full force of it can only be found when we go within, when we look within. And how do you look within? How do you begin listening to this inner voice? How do you begin following your internal guidance system, your internal compass? You enter states of meditation, you enter states of stillness, you enter states of, some could call it solitude. I wouldn't call it solitude because I've never felt alone. I've never felt lonely in this space. I've always felt deeply connected with this force, which doesn't stem from this idea of solitude, but from the external world, from what other people see you doing. It could be called something along the lines of solitude. So within this, after going through this phase of being brought up in this Catholic household, going through this rebellious phase, and then finally coming back to trying to seek a communion with this force, I thought I would find it through travel, through new experience, through solo travel, so meaning this ability to give myself solitude or space from the external world to turn within. So I bought a camper van and I started traveling around my home country, being New Zealand, on a beautiful surf adventure. And it was on this surf adventure. It was on this travel experience that I lived throughout 2020 that I really began developing this relationship with that single force. But it was not because of travel. It was simply because of the way in which I was traveling, how it allowed me to have those moments of stillness. You know, I didn't have to work. I didn't have to wake up next morning and go and do something that I didn't want to do. I just had the time to really tap in and to enter meditation, to enter these moments of stillness. So I began listening to this inner voice. And nowadays, this inner voice is all that guides. My relationship with this force has been strengthened to the point where I no longer feel I need to look externally at any point. All I need to do is tap back within and enter that moment of stillness, that moment of meditation, and just listen. Block out that external screaming noises and just listen. For the more you are able to listen, to tap into your internal compass system, the quicker you are able to transition to a life that may be far grander than what you currently could even imagine. The more you are able to surrender to this internal guidance system, the more beautiful life becomes. And you just find yourself in a different part of the dream that we call life. In a different part of natural beauty, of peace and equanimity, and of this inner knowing. I'm not making this video to say that you shouldn't follow religion. I think religion is incredibly powerful for many people, and I think it does guide you to the right place. It sort of sets you out on the right direction. But there is a part in this journey that everyone will eventually come to. A part where you will no longer be able to get anything else from the external world, where you will no longer be able to get anything else from the words of a preacher or a priest. A moment where you are asked to look for the answers within. And you are watching this video, so I imagine you have reached this space. And as paradoxes go, you're again watching this video, looking for the answers externally, looking for the answers from the words that I am saying. I'm trying to remind you that you cannot get the answers from anything I am saying. All you can do is tap back and listen from within. There is no priest, there is no preacher, there is no prophet or guru that can give you anything. You are your own Savior, and Christ is found within. The resurrection is not an external thing. It does not literally mean the body must die and be resurrected. The resurrection is simply a realization. It is a returning, a coming back to where you have always been. For this external world, this reality, this dimension that we see outside of ourselves, that we see all around us, that is sometimes screaming and seems so real and tangible, is nothing more than a dream. And you find yourself upon this video right now, Not through coincidence, not through luck, but because your soul, your inner knowing, has called this video to you. For the simple message, you must look within. There is nowhere else to go because nothing else exists. Everything you are looking for is found within yourself. There is no more pure truth than this. This is the grounding truth, and there is nothing more that I can say. There is no more potent truth that I can tell you. There is no conspiracy theory. There is no imaginary story that you are reaching for that is going to fill this thing within yourself. The only thing that can fill it is when you tap within, when you listen to this inner knowing, when you enter those moments of stillness and you trust yourself. Because when you trust yourself, you're trusting God. For we are but part of God's imagination, made in His likeness. We are of Him, we are one with Him, and we are all that is and can ever be. Everything you are looking for is inside. Bless.